Brace yourself.
At first, I found 2016 to be a pretty underwhelming year for games. While I don't find it to be the dull disappointment of 2014, I looked at the overall release schedule of 2016 to feel lacking. But then I realized that I was just looking at the year with 2017 high on my radar. With so many games coming out in 2017, even in January alone, 2016, even as a whole, feels oddly empty. But once I set aside that mentality, I realized that 2016 was really good. Pokemon Go took off globally, 2 longtime denizens of development hell finally released, and Nintendo's new system at long last got announced. But best of all is that many of the games I ended up enjoying the most this year were ones I had zero hype for. Many of the best games I played this year were ones I wasn't only not anticipating, but ones I didn't even know existed until this year. It was almost all surprises for me, and it acted as a nice defusing of hype culture that 2016 desperately needed. But the year is over, and I can only pick 10 for this list. So without further ado, here are my top 10 games of 2016. The fact that the Pokemon series can last 20 years on the same core formula is definitely worthy of merit, but I can't say the series has really had any major steps forward recently. And while Sun and Moon don't fix every issue the series has had these days, it does make incremental refinements that ultimately build up. There are many quality of life improvements in Pokemon Sun and Moon. Letting you immediately add a Pokemon to your party after catching it, using items more quickly and easily, dropping hidden machines entirely, these all stack up for a more player-friendly design. And surprise, surprise, Pokemon Sun and Moon have the best presentation seen in a Pokemon game yet. The story, while nothing unique, is presented extremely well. Dialogue is entertaining, new characters have a ton of personality, especially the goofballs in Team Skull, and overall, Sun and Moon are the closest that the Pokemon games have come to delivering a real RPG story. When all is said and done, Game Freak made some pretty noticeable strides toward improving their venerable series. Pokemon, for the first time in a long while, feels fresh again. WayForward are the kings and queens of retro gaming, and Shantae Half-Genie Hero only further establishes this. It's such an energetic and stylish 2D platformer. Its wonderful visual design is highly complemented by the gorgeous HD graphics, and its upbeat soundtrack kept me bobbing my head even during the most heated segments. The Metroidvania level design is open-ended, encouraging revisiting levels and finding secrets to unlock more areas, but exploring doesn't feel like a chore. The transformations are charming and add new dimensions to gameplay, and I love the versatility of how each new move is implemented in the stages. The boss fights are huge highlights with so much personality and style, and the challenge is right on point. Shantae Half-Genie Hero is just a fun game to play. It captures the joy and whimsy of 2D platformers of yesteryear, but without leaning on nostalgia. It's another slam dunk for one of the best indie developers in the business, and is another gem for WayForward's already shining crown. I hate the Vita, but you know what I don't hate? Severed. Drinkbox has already solidified their place in the indie scene with games like Mutant Blob's Attack and Guacamelee, but Severed very well might be their best game yet. Its swipe-based combat might look gimmicky at first, but it steadily earns a rhythm, and makes enemy encounters feel engaging. Environmental puzzles and upgrades reward exploration, allowing you to increase stats and abilities by being diligent throughout the many dungeons. While some later battles can get a little excessive on the swiping, the way Severed transcends its gimmick so well is something I just can't help but praise. It's not as light-hearted as Guacamelee, but the serious tone makes for a surprisingly compelling story. With so much content, I plowed through Severed, loving it so much that it was the very first game in which I earned a Platinum PSN trophy. Severed is an experience packed with depth and inventiveness, and only serves to further establish Drinkbox's ingenuity as indie developers. It's the most fun I've had on the Vita in a long time, though it's also on Wii U, 3DS, and iOS. But whatever, I'm giving the Vita props for once. The Last Guardian is a technical mess. It runs like total trash. Its frame rate is awful, its textures are sloppy, and its camera work is just nightmarish. But despite all of this, I couldn't help but love this game. The bond that the young hero and Trico develop over the course of the game is just so strong, built up by a touching narrative. The gameplay is straightforward, but it's the ways Trico is used throughout each sequence that really stuck with me. The Beast is a Swiss Army knife of gameplay elements. Each stage uses Trico's unique design and character elements in so many ways, and I was always eager to see how Trico would be implemented in the next area. While I don't think The Last Guardian was worth the years of waiting, and while its technical fidelity is weak beyond reason, I'm still happy that this game came out, and I'm even happier that I played it. As you know, I'm an avid fan of rhythm games. The development of the rhythm game genre has been well documented, so anytime a new one comes out, I'm on it. To this day, soundtrack has become a big factor in a rhythm game's value to me, which is the reason why I adored AudioSurf, a rhythm game that let me use my own MP3 files for the track list. So few games really make this feature work and work well, which is why I fell in love with Melody's Escape. As a runner, Melody's Escape is simpler than AudioSurf, relying only on button presses, but this simpler design makes the syncing between the music and the inputs feel much more cohesive and streamlined. The beat detection in Melody's Escape is just better than other rhythm games like it, so my entire music library felt right at home during gameplay. The clean graphic design made things even better, especially with customizable avatars and designs. Melody's Escape probably went under many folks' radars, but if you're a fan of rhythm games, I can't recommend it enough. It's a real hidden treasure. Titanfall 2 is a AAA shooter with a soul. Coming from one of the most maligned publishers in gaming today, it had no business being as entertaining as it was. Movement in Titanfall 2 is just so fluid. You're given a variety of motion techniques from wall running to double jumping to grappling to sliding, and it all flows together so seamlessly. And using the giant Titan robots is fantastic too. Each class has a unique set of abilities and moves, and the single-player campaign uses these elements intelligently. Yes, an EA shooter has a single-player campaign, and it's fantastic. The set pieces are plentiful, shocking you with over-the-top action and memorable showdowns. Titanfall 2 is everything you would never expect from Electronic Arts. It progresses the first-person shooter genre's core mechanics at every opportunity, and is an absolute joy to play. The puzzle platformer is probably one of the most popular game types to appear in independent game development, so standing out from the pack is not easy. You really have to have something special to define yourself in this genre, so I couldn't help but be shocked at how much I loved Unravel. EA's first major push toward funding small indie developers ended up paying off big time, as Coldwood Interactive burst onto the scene by using photorealistic graphic design in a creative way. For the first time in a long time, I found the hyper-realistic graphics of a game did not feel like chest beating for hardware horsepower. Yarny added a unique perspective to the naturalistic world of Unravel, turning mundane settings like a backyard or pier into landscapes of adventure. The game uses Yarny's thread as a neat way of encouraging not just solving puzzles, but solving them efficiently, as using less yarn can lead to secret paths. The game's narrative is certainly emotional, but saying Unravel is crutched by feels is doing the game a disservice. Unravel was a real surprise for me this year, and I can't wait to see Yarny again in Unravel's upcoming sequel. I don't like multiplayer games. I especially don't like online multiplayer games. I even more especially don't like team-based online multiplayer games. But damn do I love Overwatch. Overwatch's team-focused shooter gameplay already is surprisingly sound for someone like me, but it's the cast of characters that really gave the game the appeal I just didn't see in other games like it. Every fighter is so rich with unique gameplay styles, signature moves, and a sense of personality, and I think that's where Overwatch really shines. It has personality. I had my favorites, but the diverse and charismatic cast always gave me an incentive to try out a new fighter and learn the ropes of their mechanics. And Blizzard really have proven their dedication to Overwatch. Less than a year after the game's launch, we've gotten 2 new characters, plenty of updates and meta changes, and no less than 3 major events to keep players coming back. Overwatch is looking to be Blizzard's newest evergreen property, one that will keep players new and old coming back long after this year's over. I know I will. I'm a pretty casual player of the Souls series, but I'd be foolish to ignore the impact it's had on video game culture since the original Demon's Souls on PlayStation 3. Its tough-as-nails difficulty and intricate level design has earned it a dedicated following and established a unique approach to action game design. All memes aside, many games have adopted elements from Dark Souls, but this year brought me one Souls game that hooked me from start to finish, and no, it was not Dark Souls 3. Salt & Sanctuary adopts many elements from Software's legendary series, very shamelessly in fact. However, just calling it a 2D Dark Souls is doing the game a disservice. Salt & Sanctuary acts as a kind of missing link between the Souls series and the 2D Metroidvania games that influenced it. From stiff but rhythmic combat to layered and interconnected level structure, Salt & Sanctuary is just as much a homage to Castlevania Symphony of the Night as it is a homage to Dark Souls. This is all capped off with that gorgeously grim Ska Studios presentation. The ragged, eerie art direction is simply superb, especially in the boss designs, and the mixture of metal and ambient sound deliver a fantastic soundtrack. Ska Studios' first foray onto Sony hardware demonstrates James and Michelle Silva's ability to honor the games they love by building upon them, not merely copying them. There's more to Salt & Sanctuary than meets the eye, and I found myself exploring the island further and further after every single death. So before getting to the number 1 spot, here are some honorable mentions that just missed the cut. If you're like me and you're eagerly awaiting Persona 5 in 2017, I gotta say that Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE will scratch that Atlas JRPG itch. It merges the elements of Shin Megami Tensei and Fire Emblem into an approachable whole while also offering the same kind of depth you'd expect from both. The game's narrative is entertaining, the characters are endearing, and the vibrant art direction is some of the best that I've seen in an RPG ever. As one of the final games for the Wii U, I think Tokyo Mirage Sessions is one of the best games for Nintendo's ill-fated system. As I said, I'm no expert on the Souls games, which made my investment in Let It Die all the odder to me. The multiplayer roguelike spin on the Dark Souls formula was rich with nuance, forcing you to abandon attachment to your character and progress on a more micromanaged level. It's the rough, scrappy aesthetic that drives Let It Die's core elements, but it's that bottomless reserve of personality that fully establishes the game's charm. It has that purely grasshopper sense of humor, one that'll keep you smiling through the pain of defeat. Let It Die has style to burn, and I kept climbing the tower just to hang with good old Uncle Death. Thumper kicked my ass, and it kicked it hard. It's so blazingly fast and borderline unforgiving in its difficulty that I almost couldn't take it. But after completing it, I found its approach to rhythm game design enticing. The slamming industrial noise metal soundtrack, the aggressive flaring graphic design, the simple but challenging mechanics. Thumper was just a blast to experience. It's so furious in its style, a rush of searing heat that'll really rip you apart in later stages. Thumper will melt your eyes, your ears, and your confidence, but it's a spin on rhythm games that couldn't be more welcome in today's gaming scene. Doom should not exist. There is nothing in this game that has a place in this time period. Nothing. It's abnormal to our current video game climate in every possible way, but it needs to exist. Doom rejects every trope you'd expect from a first-person shooter in 2016. You run across the stage really fast, you jump like you're a kangaroo, you don't have to manually reload, you get a ton of weapons that rip apart enemies, you execute monsters really fast, you find secret items in areas, you don't have to mash a button to pry open a door. Do you know how amazing that is? You're just shooting. It's full of blood and gore from monstrous enemies with a ton of gruesome designs. Your weapons blast through them with such punch, you can upgrade your guns with new secondary fires and increase your own suit's stats to fight better. It's just so pure. Doom doesn't do anything new, but it feels new. It sheds light on how diluted and uninteresting the shooter genre has become as of late, and throws every single one of these dull elements out the window. It brings shooters back to their most straight-ahead form, while also adding a ton of worthwhile content in upgrades and secrets. It's a game that rewards diligence and exploration by cycling it all into the shooting. Doom wants you to have fun shooting hell monsters, that's all it wants, and doesn't do anything in its power to diverge from that goal. It's mind-boggling how this game even exists in 2016, but it's even more mind-boggling that so much of this game's design was uncompromised. It's shameless in its purity, never once moving away from the joyous end goal of providing a satisfying and frill-free first-person shooter, rich with action, options, and gore. Without question, Doom is my game of the year for 2016.